Welcome back, focused learners. Okay, let's just dive right into this. Today, we're tackling an absolute foundational pillar of Cambridge Mathematics AS and A level, specifically for syllabus 9709, complex numbers. Now, we're going to be looking at three vital elements today: the modulus, the argument, and the conjugate. But before we get into the equations, I actually want you to shift your perspective for a minute. I don't want you to just think of this as abstract mathematics. I want you to think of it like a gymnast's routine. Seriously, picture it. In gymnastics, you don't get points just for showing up and throwing yourself across the mat, right? You're judged on perfect form, flawless execution, and sticking that perfect landing. Well, the examiners for 9709 are exactly the same way. This topic, complex numbers, appears in literally every single examination series. And mastering it, it requires the exact same discipline, precision, and balance as an Olympic gymnast. We're going to use the core concepts in this explainer to build up your mathematical core strength, so you can stick that perfect landing on exam day. Here is the routine we're going to perform today. 1. Core principles and concepts. 2. The procedural framework. 3. Examiner warnings and deductions. And 4. Achieving ultimate exam mastery. Let's get moving. Section 1. Core principles and concepts. Building strength. Okay, so to secure top-tier marks in Cambridge 9709, you absolutely need logical, structured reasoning over superficial memorization. You can't just memorize formulas and hope for the best. We can visualize the very first component of that foundation right now: the modulus. Think of the modulus as the physical reach of our gymnast. Mathematically speaking, it's the absolute magnitude. It's the fundamental quantifiable distance of a complex number straight from the origin on an organ diagram. It's a real positive number. At its core, it just tells us how far. And look, without a precise grasp of the modulus, your routine has zero spatial awareness. It is the absolute foundation of all your complex plane geometry. If you don't know your reach, you're going to fall off the mat. Moving right along, our next movement is the argument. If the modulus is the reach, the distance, then the argument is the direction. It's the precise directional angle that a complex number creates relative to the positive real axis. Now think back to gymnastics. If a gymnast's angle is off by even a tiny fraction of a degree during a flip, the whole routine falls apart, right? They completely miss the landing. The exact same rule applies to your 9709 exam. The argument dictates exactly where your mathematical movement flows. It gives that magnitude we just talked about a highly specific destination. And completing this theoretical triad, we have the conjugate. The conjugate is the exact mathematical reflection of our complex number across the real axis. Operationally, it's super simple. You literally just reverse the sign of the imaginary part. But why is this so incredibly vital? Well, it acts as the perfect mirror reflection. In any routine, balance is everything. When you multiply a complex number by its conjugate, you completely eliminate the imaginary component, which grounds your complex, abstract movements right back into solid, real numbers. It is the ultimate stabilizing technique for your calculations. So you might be wondering, how are you actually judged on these three elements? Let's break down the cognitive domains directly from the syllabus. This is the rubric. This is exactly how examiners evaluate the depth and quality of your routine. Column 1 is knowledge and understanding. Basically, do you know the basic definitions of modulus, argument, and conjugate? Column 2 is application. Can you apply these concepts to standard, everyday, familiar problems? But column 3 is where the real magic happens. That's analysis. This requires you to extract data, interpret subtle relationships, and draw completely evidence-based conclusions in really complex, unfamiliar scenarios. The judges, the examiners, aren't just looking at what you memorized. They are looking at how gracefully you can analyze and manipulate what you know under pressure. And here is the absolutely crucial point to remember. Cross-topic connections equal significantly higher marks, period. The theoretical architecture of complex numbers doesn't just exist in a vacuum. The principal examiner reports specifically highlight that candidates who reference cross-topic connections, maybe linking complex numbers to polynomials or seamlessly integrating trigonometric identities into their argument calculations, those are the candidates who elevate their performance to the absolute highest tier. When you connect the dots across the entire syllabus, you are showing the examiner true mathematical mastery. Now, before we continue, subscribe to our YouTube channel Ace the Exams at acetheexams_IGCSE to excel in your Cambridge examinations. Click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon right now. All right, moving on to Section 2, the procedural framework, executing the routine. Now that we've built up our core strength, we need to talk execution. Because it's not enough to just know the moves. You have to execute them in the perfect sequence. Here's the 5-step framework that top candidates use to systematically process complex numbers. Step 1, identify key elements. So extract the relevant data from the text or the tables. Step 2, apply relevant principles. select your analytical framework. Step 3, execute the analysis. And this means showing crystal clear working and notation. Step 4, verify your results. Basically, do a quick sanity check for reasonableness. And Step 5, present in the appropriate format. What's absolutely vital to understand here is the concept of the method mark. Cambridge examiners award marks for the process, not just the final number at the bottom of the page. Following these 5 steps religiously guarantees you are capturing every single possible method mark along the way.
Now I know what you're thinking. 5 steps can feel like a lot to juggle when you're sweating in an exam hall. So if you need a shortcut, memorize this core mantra: deconstruct, solve, evaluate. This is your ultimate problem-solving lifeline for Cambridge mathematics. First, deconstruct the question to identify the given information and break it down into logical, bite-sized pieces. Second, solve it systematically using clear, undeniable notation. Third, evaluate your work. Actually take a second to make justified recommendations or conclusions based on what you just solved. This simple 3-word mantra ensures your routine flows logically from start to finish.
Which naturally brings us to an essential question. How do top-scoring candidates actually demonstrate evaluative thinking? Take a second and really think about that. How do the truly exceptional A-star students stand out to the examiners? Well, the source material tells us the exact answer. They actively question assumptions. They consider different perspectives within the bounds of the problem, and most importantly, they justify their decisions with hard mathematical evidence. They don't just act like human calculators, they evaluate. Stop scrolling. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ace the Exams, at acetheexams_IGCSE to excel in your Cambridge examinations. We've helped thousands of students improve by 2-3 grade boundaries. Join them right now by subscribing to @acetheexams_IGCSE and turn on all notifications so you never miss our weekly exam strategy sessions. Okay, let's get into Section 3, Examiner Warnings and Deductions, Avoiding Penalties.
When we look closely at the principal examiner reports, we can see exactly where students trip up and just hemorrhage points. On one side, we see flawed execution. This is candidates confusing key terminology and providing answers that completely lack context. On the flip side, we have perfect form, using precise definitions, mapping out causal relationships, and using justified systematic solving. I want to be really clear here, the difference between an average grade and a top-tier grade usually isn't raw mathematical ability, it's the discipline of form. When you rely on flawed, sloppy execution, you lose those precious method marks, even if your final number somehow magically ends up being correct. I want you to listen to this massive alert straight from the principal examiner reports. Quote, "Candidates consistently confuse key terminology. Always define terms before using them in extended responses." Unquote. Let that sink in for a second. The examiners are practically begging you to be clear. If a question asks you to evaluate the argument or the conjugate, you must ensure your notation explicitly shows that you know exactly which is which. Do not let lazy, ambiguous terminology ruin a perfectly brilliant calculation. Building right on top of that, here are the top 3 most common deductions that examiners are literally forced to penalize year after year. Number 1, forgetting to include the proper format. Number 2, neglecting to check that format in presentation. And number 3, providing answers that are not specific to the given context. Do you notice a theme here? None of these top 3 mistakes are about not knowing how to calculate a modulus or an argument. They are entirely about presentation, formatting, and context. These are completely avoidable deductions. They are easy marks that slip away simply because a candidate rushed their landing. We're in the final stretch. Section 4, Achieving Ultimate Exam Mastery, the Perfect Landing. All right, so we've built the core strength, we've learned the procedural framework, and we know exactly where the pitfalls are. Now, to help you execute flawlessly under the intense pressure of the exam hall, the source material actually recommends a brilliant memory hack. You need to create your own mnemonic device. Extract the first letters of the key terms we've discussed today. M for modulus, A for argument, C for conjugate, F for format, and C for context. MACFC. I highly recommend taking just 5 minutes after this explainer wraps up to create a personal, memorable, maybe even slightly ridiculous phrase from these letters. When you flip to a complex numbers question on your 9709 paper, write that mnemonic right at the top of the page. It will act as your foolproof mental checklist to guarantee you don't miss a single step of the routine.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Will your next practice routine execute with perfect form, or will you lose marks on the landing? The choice is entirely yours. You now know the theoretical foundations, the deconstruct, solve, evaluate methodology, and the exact pitfalls the examiners are actively watching for. I challenge you to apply this precise, gymnast-like methodology to deconstruct and solve your very next complex numbers pass paper. Don't just practice getting the right answer, Practice perfect form. Students who implement these mathematics strategies see an average improvement of 2 grade boundaries, but only if they practice consistently with our weekly videos. Here's your final reminder. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ace the Exams, at acexams_IGCS to excel in your Cambridge examinations. Subscribe right now to at acexams_IGCS and click that bell. Don't let another exam pass you by. Drop a comment below with your target grade for mathematics and the biggest challenge you're facing. Our team responds to every comment. Like and share this video with a study partner. AC Exams, your Cambridge success starts here.